Shwmai, croeso Gwerth Gwlan. Hello and welcome to Gwerth Gwlan. My name is Debby Mercer and I am a third year BA Liberal Arts student here at UWTSD Lampter. For my dissertation, I have put on an exhibition looking at the value of wool, past, present and future. There are rules to my exhibition because this is an interactive exhibition. The idea is that people have a tactile experience and it helps them to remember and engage with Welsh wool. So you have to touch everything, take lots of photos and share them wherever you like and with whoever you like, and be noisy, have fun, laugh, ask questions, and don't be afraid. Sheep are a really important part of our society. In fact, without sheep, some of the biggest cities of early times would not have existed. Before sheep, people used to grow their textiles, things like hemp and flax and nettles. But once you've got sheep that can live on practically air, all of that growing ground can go towards making food. With more food, you can have more people. More people means craft specialization, and that's what creates cities. Part of this exhibit is also these amazing cards called tup trumps. These showcase the 72 native breeds of sheep that we have on the British Isles and their fleecy qualities. Along with the tup trumps, there's also wool here for people to handle and take home. Put it in your pocket, take it with you. And then maybe in a few days' time, when you put your hand back in your pocket and find the wool, you'll think, oh yeah, I remember now, I went to that place and I learned a lot about wool and how important wool was, not just for the past, but for now as well. So we've shared our sheep and got our wool. What next? Well, to turn that wool into yarn, we'll have to spin it. Drop spindles are the original technology. Long before men were playing around with stones and flint, women were spinning yarn with their sticks. It's an important part of women's work, because not only were textiles really important for the home and for sale and for the economy, but this kind of thing can also be done alongside the other daily chores around the house, including looking after the chickens, the kitchen garden, and the children. So now we have our yarn, what to do with it next? Nowadays we think of knitting and crochet, but back in the past they would have been spending their time weaving, and traditionally they would have used a warp-weighted loom. The warp-weighted loom came about with sheep wool being used because the stickiness of the wool allows the warp to be held upright. Woolen material was incredibly important in the ancient times. The Vikings could never have conquered the North Atlantic without their wool. It takes about 100,000 hours to make enough textiles for a single Viking warship, and there were hundreds of thousands of Viking warships. So without those textiles and without those sheep, the Vikings could never have conquered the North Atlantic and become the fierce force that we know them as today. Wool was manufactured in the way I've shown you for thousands of years, but textiles played an important role in the Industrial Revolution. Wool still dominated in Wales, and the Teivi Valley was no exception. There were hundreds of mills all along the Teivi Valley taking their power from the river. However, the glory days of the Teivi Valley only lasted for a few short decades. By the 1920s, some of the largest mills had stopped production. By 1957, there were just these few mills remaining. And by 1964, only 7 of those remained in production, and 2 of them were museums. However, organisations such as the Welsh Mill Society help current mill owners with research, conservation and restoration. So there is still a chance for those water-powered mills, even if they're not doing anything commercial, to exist and be celebrated. But all is not lost for Welsh wool. There are plenty of non-textile uses that are currently being explored that will enable us to add worth to this amazing product. New fiberglass products, including chairs and furniture with wool as their primary base, are being developed. Wool insulation is being used, so wool is no longer just for keeping you warm, but also for keeping your homes warm. And the Biocomposite Centre, based at Bangor University, is working on new biocomposite uses for wool, including breaking that wool down into its keratin and reforming it into new products that can be stable and biodegradable. We've got lots of interactive elements here at Gwerth Gwlan, including this fantastic wool sack for sitting on and lying down on, and this amazing VR headset, which gives you a 360 experience of a woolen mill and of sheep on the mountains, provided by Gwneud a Gwlan, made with wool. The first development after the spindle to the spinning wheel that we recognise today was the great wheel, or the walking wheel. Historians estimate that women would have walked between 15 and 20 miles a day, just spinning their yarn. So what we're going to start off with is carding. So we're going to be making a rowlag. So you want to take your big old clump of wool and one of your paddles, push the wool into the pins and then just pull it away from you. Now you don't have to use all the wool that I've given you. You just want to get about that much.
Oh, that's why it's going wrong.
Yeah, and then just, that's it, pull it down. Yeah, so you want to have about that much wool on there.
Maybe 10.
Now, this bit that's overhanging here, this is called the beard, and this is where we're going to start. So grab your other paddle, and what you want to do is gently brush, starting with the beard and moving up a little bit each time. The really important thing to remember is that you don't want to push those pins in together. So your paddles are just going to be gliding over the top of each other. Now the reason that we're doing this is to align that mass of fibres that you started with into roughly the same direction. It just makes it a bit easier to spin. Now we've been using raw fleece for this because to wash it takes a lot of energy and a lot of water. So it's much easier to just process your fleece in the raw, and then if you really want it to be clean, you can wash it when it's finished. And we can also take this opportunity to pick out all the little bits of veggie matter that a sheep picks up on its travels. And trust me, I have sat down before and I have sorted through an entire fleece to pick out all the bits of veggie matter, and then I carded it and more veggie matter came out anyway. So it is fine to just start with the carding process. So once you've done a bit of that, the next thing we need to do is called the doffing. So doffing is where we're going to take all of the fibres off one carder and put it onto the other. So you want your pins to be facing towards you. Put the paddle about halfway down. That's it. Now, fair warning, this is where you might get injured, so be careful. What we're going to do is hold that bottom paddle really firmly. Push that top one down. This is where you do want the pins to mesh together. Hold on to that bottom one and push that top one all the way. Ooh. Anything that you've got left over on your paddle, just pick that off and put it to one side. That can be used for needle felting, or it can go out into the garden. Especially at this time of the year, little bits of fluff like this are perfect for the birds for making their nests nice and warm. And then we go again. So we're going to doff again, but this time you want your full carder, the one with the most fleece on it, to be upright. So that's the one we're doffing off, because all of the fibres so far, this is the paddle we loaded, which means all those fibres closest to the fabric there haven't been touched yet. So pins facing you, paddle the other way, that's it. About halfway down the carder. And then we're pushing those paddles together, hold on to the bottom one really firmly, and push the top one all the way down. Next step is to learn how to spin. So there's two important steps in spinning. One is adding the twist and the other is drafting out the fibres. And we're going to do those bits in two parts. So you're going to learn how to use your spindle first, and then we will add the rolag in so that you can learn how to draft. So the first thing, and my only technical term in drop spinning, is to make your fluffy. So you've all got a 3-ply yarn on there. So what you need to do is pull apart the yarn. So you should have 3 strands, and that is your fluffy. Whenever you're adding two things together, the most important thing to remember is fluffy to fluffy. So as long as you've got 2 fluffy ends, you'll be fine. Okay, now you've all been given a bit of sliver or pencil roving. This particular stuff comes from the National Wool Museum. And what we're going to do is we're going to overlap fluffy to fluffy. And then using your left hand, you want to just pinch at the bottom of the sliver. So I've got that going up behind. That's it. And then with your left hand, pinching at the bottom of the sliver. Yeah, so you should be able to hold your spindle up with your left hand. So, yeah, you just want to hook that round and round. There we go. Hold your spindle up with your left hand. Now, the reason I've chucked the sliver up over your shoulder is because you really want it to stay out the way. If it's dangling down here, it's going to get caught up in your spindle, and that won't be fun for anybody. So what we're going to do next is add some twist. So with your right hand, hold onto your spindle and give it a flick to build up that twist. Once you've got some twist, you've got the sliver tangled around your thing. It's all right, Nathan, you can do it.
I'm special.
Okay, here we go. Right, so you want to flick it in that direction. Now park it between your legs. So use your legs to pinch it. That will stop it from unraveling in the other direction. Now the sliver is quite fragile, so you need to be careful with it. Now you've got a spare hand that you can do something with. With that spare hand, pinch just below where your fingers are, so closer to the hook. That's it. And now let go with the top hand. And now, without pulling on anything, just put your hand slightly higher up on your sliver and pinch again. Not too high, so I'm not going too high up. Go to the end of your fluffy. And then when I release with the bottom hand, the twist will travel up the yarn.
Or not. Oops.
Yeah, and that's, you've made yarn. Well, you've made yarn, you've made yarn. We'll work on you. But that is the principles. So have you got your fluffy to fluffy? Because we'll be doing it again. Yeah, and then put it around the hook.
There.
That's it. Okay, and now twist your spindle to build up, flick your spindle to build up your twist. And then park it between your legs so that it doesn't unravel. Now use your spare hand to pinch just below your fingers and let go. And then with your now free hand, without pulling on anything, just move your hand up that sliver, pinch again, release with your bottom fingers, and the twist will travel up the yarn.
Oh, yes.
And you are now officially spinners. Congratulations. Well done. And that is spinning. And when you get it to a certain point like you've got now, so hold on to your spindle and keep a little bit of tension on the thread and just manipulate the spindle so that you can unhook the yarn from your spindle. Unhook your yarn, yeah, and then you just wind it onto the shaft. That's it, and when we are hooking it up again, you might need to give yourself a little bit more space. So don't worry about putting it all the way on, but you want to make sure you can hook it on, but also you've got room for your fingers to do stuff underneath. That's it. So one of the reasons that the pinching becomes so important is because twist is what gives wool strength, it's what gives the yarn strength. So if I take this rolag now and try and just pull it apart, you'll see it's really easy and it's already pulling apart. Now what I'm going to do is add 1 twist, 2 twist, 3 twist, 4. So all I've done is 4 twists. And when you think about how many twists you're adding every time you flick that spindle, And now, even then, it's still attached together. So all the strength in your yarn is coming from your twist. So the first thing we need to do is break our spinning. So by that I mean put on the brake. So what you're going to do is unhook it from your, that's it, and then wind it onto the shaft right the way up to your fingers, and then just carry on going, and then it will stop the twist. And then grab your rolag. So what you want to do is the same as what I said before, fluffy to fluffy, so make sure one end of your rolag is suitably fluffed. That's fine, don't worry about that, because you'll need fluffy. So once you've fluffed up one end of your rolag, put your yarn back onto your hook. Just go back a bit further, you'll be fine.
Oh, I'm lost now. In there, isn't it? Yeah. Oh,
There we
put it
go.
around, okay.
I put it around a few times, and that way, if it slips, it doesn't matter too much. Right, so we've got one end of our fluffed up rolag, and the same as what we did before, you're laying over fluffy to fluffy and pinching at the bottom of the rolag. And then just make sure your rolag is tucked up out of the way. So try and throw it over your wrist, that's it, because otherwise you're going to end up with it wrapping itself round. So the same principle, give your spindle a flick to build up that twist, and then park it between your legs. And pinch just below your fingers, but whereas last time we were only moving our hand, this time, see how far apart my hands are to start with? I'm pulling on that rolag and separating those fibres. Once I've pulled out a little bit, I move my hand closer together and just pull it again until I have just enough fibres that I want. And then I pinch, let go with the bottom, and allow the twist to travel up those fibres. Now, don't worry too much about making a perfect yarn, because this yarn that you make now is going to be the most creative, the most beautiful, and the most fantastic yarn you will ever make, because once you get good at spinning, it becomes really easy to make fine yarn, but very difficult to make fluffy, interesting, creative, colourful yarn. So whatever you make today is going to be the most expressive yarn you will ever make in your entire spinning life. But we have the same principles that we were doing with the sliver. Flick the spindle to build up the twist, park it between our legs to act as a brake, pinch just below the fingers. Now the important thing is how far apart my hands are when I start to draft, because these fibres that are right by my finger here, they're already spun, they're already trapped in that yarn. So you want to be pulling from quite far away, and with each little bit you pull out, just move your hands a little closer and a little closer. Pinch again, and allow the twist to travel up. And now you've all spun yarn from rolags that you carded. You have officially joined the ranks of the millions of women who came before you, and you're officially spinners. Nah, spinning is women's work.